I want to show y'all something. Do you see that goalpost at the far end of that football field? That is how far the Linda Lane security camera is from the 1122 King Road house. Hey everyone, it's Lucky with Unfiltered Lucky. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about something that I haven't really talked too much about. I'm going to talk about the Linda Lane security camera footage. Now, I've mentioned this in previous videos, but I really haven't talked too much about the Linda Lane footage. And I'm going to explain to you why. Now, there's a lot of really great channels who are covering the Linda Lane footage. I've seen a lot of really great research, and there's a lot of creators out there who are really looking into this Linda Lane footage. Now, for me, I have experience working with surveillance equipment. I've installed it, I've programmed it, and I use it. So I know a little bit about security cameras and how they operate. So the first thing that turned me off about the security camera at 1330 Linda Lane is where it's located. It's located over 100 yards from the King Road house. Not to mention, there's a huge apartment complex full of residents in between that camera and the house at 1122 King Road. This is just my opinion, and I know that this probably isn't going to be a popular opinion, but I don't believe that the camera on Linda Lane was picking up audio from the King Road house. I just feel like the distance is too great. You know, I've heard people say, but they lived in a fishbowl, and there was, the tunnel that goes down the center of the apartment complex created a perfect speaker for sound, and it's a security camera with a microphone. If you watch that security camera with that microphone and without any filters, it's going to sound like you're underwater. You're not going to hear anything crisp. You're not going to hear really anything that that makes any sense unless someone is standing right in front of that camera. So you're not going to hear dogs barking 100 yards away. You're not going to hear people yelling 100 yards away. Now, a standard residential security camera can hear audio up to, on average, around 30 feet. 30 feet. And that's stretching it. So, security cameras aren't made to cover long distances. Now, there are some that are meant to cover long distances, but your typical residential security camera is meant to cover a dedicated area. So whether it be your driveway or your front yard or, your shop or an entrance to a building, it's meant to cover that area. It's not meant to cover over 300 feet away. In my experience, most people who are using outdoor surveillance cameras don't ever even get the audio feature. They don't even get the microphone connected to the camera because it's really kind of useless outdoors unless somebody is standing right in front of that camera. Now, there's a big reason why they don't make microphones that can pick up sound from your whole neighborhood. And the reason is for legal reasons. You can't just be listening in on your neighbor's conversations. So Security cameras, outdoor security cameras, are meant to provide one function, and that is to cover a dedicated area, and that's it. There's nothing magical about a security camera. It just is what it is. We're fixated on the King Roadhouse. So we think that everything around in that area was also fixated on the King Roadhouse. But we have to remember, this community didn't know these crimes were happening. So it's just regular life as usual. And these cameras are also not fixated on the King Roadhouse. There's a lot of factors that play into the effectiveness of a security camera. A lot of, and some of these factors are very simple. Obviously where you place the camera. Now, the 1330 Linda Lane security camera was under a carport. When I first watched the Linda Lane footage, it was kind of like watching a movie, that you heard was really good, but you keep waiting for it to get better, and it just never does. Because basically with the Linda Lane footage, all you're watching is just a fence and a bush. If this camera was facing the King Road house, if this camera was facing the King Road house or had any view of anywhere directly around the King Road house, then absolutely I would say that is important. But this camera is a block away. Now, do I think that this camera has value as far as the investigation? Sure. You can see cars passing by. So it is possible that this camera was able to pick up a vehicle that might have been around the King Roadhouse. But as I said, when I first watched this video, I thought, maybe we're going to see somebody run through, or because behind those apartments is very, very dark. So I felt like that would be a good place for somebody to run to from the King Roadhouse possibly and get away from the property so that they could possibly get themselves together before they left the area. But when I looked on the map and I started looking at where this camera was, as opposed to where the King Roadhouse was, I realized that it's a long distance away from the King Roadhouse. I just don't feel, and again, this is just my opinion, but I don't feel like that security camera on Linda Lane is close enough to the King Roadhouse to really be effective. People have said that they've heard audio on this camera, and that they've heard things that they believe came from the King Roadhouse on this camera. And I don't see that. I don't. I feel like the King Roadhouse is too far away from this camera in order for this camera to pick up audio. People have said that because it was the middle of the night and, stuff like that. But there were still people out. There would have been a lot of other noises that this camera was picking up because there were people out and about. And we saw that in the Banfield footage. There were cars out driving around. I always thought it was, when I first saw the Linda Lane footage, I kind of thought that maybe that car was the undercover law enforcement officers who were in the area busting kids for drinking underage. I thought it was very strange that they were also in a vehicle, a light-colored four-door sedan, and I thought it was really strange that they were in that vehicle and that eventually they would end up looking for a vehicle that was very similar as suspect vehicle number 1. So I thought it was kind of strange that they just happened to be in a vehicle that was almost the same as suspect vehicle number 1. The location of this camera is very important. It's not aimed even in the direction of the King Road house. And with that apartment building in between the camera and the King Road house, there's a lot of people living in this apartment complex. People have said that they heard things on this security camera. And I have no doubt that maybe people did hear things on this security camera. But I don't believe that it was coming from the King Road house. This was a neighborhood. So I'm sure that Murphy was not the only dog who could have barked in this neighborhood. It could have been any dog in this neighborhood. I'm sure that there wasn't only yelling coming from the King Road house. There was kids out in the band field. There was kids out walking around. There was parties going on that night. So it's very possible that people are hearing audio on this camera. But we have to remember that this camera is not fixated on 1122 King Road. This audio could be coming from anywhere. And unless you can see on your camera what is making that noise, you would have no idea what direction this noise is coming from. So I do believe that this camera does have some value because it does show some vehicles come in and out of frame. But other than that, I feel like that's the only real value that this camera would have at Linda Lane. Now, security cameras, as I said before, there's a lot of factors that go into your security camera working effectively. I mean, I'm talking about things as simple as cleaning the lenses on your security camera. And you'd be surprised how many people just don't do that. You know, but working with security cameras and having some experience with security cameras also makes me wonder if we're ever going to see a clear image of Brian Kohberger in his white Hyundai Elantra at the King Road house. It's very possible that law enforcement doesn't have any clear footage from the neighborhood. It's very possible the only clear footage that they have is from the traffic cams. So I'm curious as to if law enforcement really does have clear footage of this white Hyundai Elantra or Brian Kohberger. Because I have my doubts that they do. Now, stay tuned for my next video, and please like, and if you like my content, please subscribe to my channel. I really do appreciate it. We'll see you next time.